I look at my reflection in the mirror and still sometimes fail to recognize the person who has gone down such a difficult road to save a relationship that once seemed doomed. My name is Ryan, and a long time ago, I believed love would always protect me from betrayal and pain. Years ago, I met a girl named Jenny, and we thought our happiness was unshakable. But reality turned out to be far more complicated than I had imagined. Suddenly, a third person forced his way into our relationship. Mark, a name that haunted my nightmares once I learned he was involved with Jenny. My world collapsed, and the following months and years were a series of ups and downs, where it felt like everything I had was breaking to pieces. I doubted myself. I doubted Jenny, and ultimately I decided to give our relationship a second chance. We tried our best to rebuild trust, but along the way, someone, under a fake name or anonymously, tried to undermine our renewed relationship by sending me letters filled with accusations and forged proof. We could hardly believe we'd ever see an end to this relentless drama. At one point, I almost gave up hope that we could truly start over. Yet, in a surprising twist, the man I had deemed the source of my greatest pain, Mark, turned out not to be the evil mastermind I had painted him to be. A chance encounter at the coast showed he might be only part of the puzzle, and not the author of all the anonymous letters and fabricated evidence that had plagued Jenny and me for months on end. I searched everywhere for answers, among friends, acquaintances, people from my past and present. Time kept passing, but we never seemed to get the clarity we needed. Both of us continued receiving hints that someone wanted to sow hatred between us, to shatter our already fragile trust. The past kept resurfacing, yet we managed to survive thanks to our mutual support and determination to keep going. I battled fear and anger. Jenny fought overwhelming guilt and a yearning to make things right. Both of us changed almost beyond recognition. And precisely that transformation led to the moment when the truth began to come to light, showing that people were capable of cruelty we never imagined possible. But let me go back to the point where we had nearly accepted the idea that the anonymous threat was never going to be found, and we hit a period of relative calm. She was sitting in the living room, working on yet another design project, when I got home from work in a decent mood. I placed a cup of green tea in front of her. She liked to sip it in the evenings. She smiled at me, radiating a quiet gratitude. It felt good to see her so focused and passionate about her craft. It reminded me of why I'd fallen for her back then. Even after all we'd been through, her bright eyes and subtle smile remained unchanged. We had dinner and noted that our anniversary of sorts was coming up. The anniversary of our reunion. Jenny suggested celebrating with a cozy, romantic night. I agreed, thinking that the date marked when we truly said yes to a new stage in our relationship following her affair. Deep down, I still remained cautious, but I was no longer tormented by constant uncertainty. Later that evening, as we lay in bed, we spoke in whispers about our future. Jenny asked if I ever wanted to return to my hometown, where my parents still lived. I shook my head. Too many memories there. I liked our life in this city, where I had a new job, strong professional connections, and a fresh group of friends. Jenny agreed, pointing out that she'd found outstanding opportunities here for her career. It felt like we were finally on stable ground. But calm never lasts forever. A few days later, my friend Josh contacted me with potentially big news. We met in a small coffee shop near my office, taking seats by the window. He opened his laptop and told me it seemed our anonymous sender had slipped up. One of the emails was sent without proper IP masking. He explained that he had a friend who digs deeper in the IT sphere, and that friend had tracked the email to a server in a particular district in our city. It wasn't an exact address, but it narrowed down the search. I leaned forward. So we might actually be onto something? I asked. Josh said yes, we might. Then again, The perpetrator might have realized their mistake and might not repeat it. Still, it was a huge step forward. That evening, I told Jenny about this new lead, and she was relieved, suggesting maybe it was someone she knew through work or perhaps a neighbor who had harbored resentment. It was hard to imagine such deep-seated malice, but life can produce shocking examples of envy and hatred. We decided to be ready. If another email arrived, Josh and his friend would quickly track it. Sure enough, as if on schedule, I got another alert in my inbox a few days later. Incoming email from unknown sender. My heart pounded, but apart from fear, I also felt the drive to expose the culprit. I immediately forwarded it to Josh. He and his friend went to work gathering data. Within half an hour, he called me in excitement. It worked. The sender slipped up again. We've got the IP log, and it's definitely a local connection in that same part of town, probably a coffee shop or a co-working space. I rushed to tell Jenny, and we both realized that while we didn't have an exact address, we at least had a real lead. Over the next couple of days, Josh told me his friend went to that area, talked to some local network administrators, and learned there was a small design office, an internet cafe, and a couple of shops offering public Wi-Fi. So presumably, the sender could be connected to one of those places. Josh proposed a plan. We could set up a sting operation at these spots. If the next email is sent by the same person and they fail to hide their trail again, we can watch who logs in, who seems suspicious. It sounded like a scene out of a spy movie, but we were desperate. Jenny and I recruited Cindy, another friend with some tech skills, to help. The plan meant that for the next few days we took turns hanging around those places, Josh, Cindy, and a few others, pretending to be regular patrons, but secretly watching. I myself spent 2 evenings at the local internet cafe drinking terrible coffee, observing everyone with a laptop. It was boring, and after a while we started to think it was a bust. Then Cindy called me. There's a lead. Tonight, at the design bureau next door, there was a young woman who acted oddly and left in a hurry. I checked the security cameras outside. I had a favor owed to me, and it turns out she's been there multiple nights in a row. She might be our suspect. I asked if Cindy recognized her, but she said no. She had camera footage that showed this woman's face. I had Cindy send me the screenshot, and I froze. It was Rebecca, my sister Sarah's friend, who I'd met years ago when visiting my sister in another state. Back then, she'd seemed sweet, and we'd only had a brief chat because I wasn't ready for a new relationship at the time. I'd practically forgotten about her. So why was she here in my city, and possibly behind these emails? It made no sense. Rebecca lived far away last I heard. Why come here and send hateful letters about Jenny? I called my sister, asked if she knew anything about Rebecca's whereabouts. Sarah was surprised. Yes, she mentioned maybe looking for a job in your city, but I didn't know she'd already made the move. Why do you ask? I stayed vague, saying maybe I'd bump into her and just wanted to be prepared. Inside, my brain was spinning. Could it be that Rebecca still had some hidden feelings for me and was furious I'd gone back to Jenny? Could that be enough to drive her to sabotage us? It sounded insane, but I couldn't rule it out. I showed the camera image to Jenny, explaining who Rebecca was. She furrowed her brow. I've never heard you mention her, but if she's a friend of your sister, maybe she's heard a lot about us? I nodded, suggesting maybe she'd nurtured some private jealousy or resentment when she learned I'd reconciled with Jenny. It was only a guess, but the timeline kind of fit. We need to be sure, Jenny said. We decided to confront Rebecca directly. I asked Sarah to let me know if Rebecca reached out again. Sarah said that, as a matter of fact, Rebecca wanted to see me now that she was in town. Perfect. We arranged a casual meetup so she wouldn't be suspicious. Sarah invited both of us for coffee downtown. Rebecca apparently didn't mind. I was anxious. Jenny stayed home, figuring the conversation would go smoother one-on-one. I had no idea what to expect from Rebecca. Maybe she was innocent, and the timing was sheer coincidence, or maybe she'd reveal a plot to take revenge on me for ignoring her in the past. I just had to see. When we met at the cafe, my sister introduced me to Rebecca like we were meeting for the first time, though we'd already met, and we had some small talk. After a while, Sarah made an excuse to leave, which left Rebecca and me alone. Rebecca turned to me calmly. "I suspect you wanted to talk in private. What's going on?" So I told her the truth. "I know you've been frequenting the co-working space and design office near where multiple anonymous letters to me were sent. I need to know if it's you." She went pale, eyes downcast, then softly said, "So you noticed." My heart pounded. "So you admit it's you?" I asked as calmly as I could. Rebecca bit her lip, clearly shaken. "Yes, I sent those letters. I never meant for it to go this far. It's just, I saw your social media, saw that you got back together with Jenny, even though she cheated on you. And it hurt me to see you do that. I actually had feelings for you back then, but you never seemed interested. Then you took her back, even after she betrayed you, and I couldn't handle it. I thought if I warned you, showed you how unreliable she was, you'd leave her." I stared at her, stunned. "Warn me? Seriously? By forging screenshots and sending threatening letters? That's not a warning. That's sabotage." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I just wanted you to see she'd hurt you again. First, I sent vague messages hoping you'd get the hint and break up, but you refused. So I decided to fake more evidence. I learned how to doctor screenshots. I convinced myself it was for your own good. When it spiraled, I didn't know how to stop. I felt a mix of anger, pity, and shock." "You realize you've put us through?" I doubted Jenny all over again. I tortured myself with jealousy. We thought it might be Mark or other enemies. You basically stole a year and a half of our peace. How could you do this?" She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. I know I'm horrible. I'm sorry. I'll take whatever punishment you decide. I really didn't want to hurt you. I was just too fixated on you and too bitter that you forgave her." I took a deep breath to remain composed. "Listen, Rebecca, you caused enormous damage. The worst part is that you fed off my pain, made it worse, using it as a reason to break us up. You claim you wanted to protect me, but you were inflicting fresh wounds." She nodded through tears. "I realize that. I was obsessed and couldn't think straight. I accept I've done something unforgivable. What can I do for you to forgive me?" I couldn't even answer. I had zero desire to forgive her on the spot. I just wanted her out of my life. "Well, thanks for coming clean," I managed. "I hope you understand you can't keep doing this. I'll tell Jenny, and we'll figure out how to proceed." She gave me a terrified look. "Please don't go to the police. I swear I'm done." I shrugged, not promising anything. "You're lucky I'm not filing a complaint right now." I left feeling shaken and upset. My first instinct was to tell Jenny. Part of me also wanted to call my sister, outraged that her friend did such a thing. But I called Josh first, telling him the culprit's identity. He was stunned. "Rebecca? The same friend you met at your sister's? Dude, that's insane. So what now?" Back home, Jenny was waiting anxiously. She asked, "So how did it go?" I collapsed onto the couch and recounted everything. At first, she didn't believe me, but the look on my face convinced her I was serious. Her reaction was a mix of disgust and relief. I never expected something like that, but at least it explains everything. Then she asked if we'd press charges. I hesitated. It was definitely harassment and defamation, but I wasn't sure going to the police was worth it. "We can threaten it if she doesn't stop, but I'm too drained right now. Let's think it over," I replied. That night we talked for hours about how stressful it had been. Finally, knowing the truth brought us both a sense of release. Jenny said, "Despite everything that girl did, I feel relieved it wasn't me or Mark or some coworker we never suspected. Now no one can say our relationship is just a bunch of lies. We survived all that." I felt a surge of quiet gratitude hearing her words. We hugged, both of us believing the darkest period was behind us. The next morning, I called my sister and told her the gist. She was stunned. "Rebecca always seemed so nice and quiet. I'm sorry I introduced you to her." I told her it wasn't her fault. I then texted Rebecca a short ultimatum. "Jenny and I won't go to the police if you drop this immediately and never contact my family again. Any further attacks and we press charges." She replied, "Agreed. Once again, I'm sorry. I hope you'll be happy." That ended our conversation. Part of me was relieved the unknown tormentor was finally unmasked and we could breathe easier. Yet I still felt a deep residue of bitterness. To realize that someone, allegedly acting out of love, could manipulate our fears so cruelly left me shaken. But ironically, the exposure of the real culprit actually strengthened my relationship with Jenny. All those letters that fueled my suspicions turned out to be fabricated by a jealous outsider, and it underscored that everything we had done since her betrayal, the apologies, the restored trust, had been genuine. Also, I could see how much we had both changed for each other. That marked the start of a new page in our life, no longer overshadowed by ghostly emails or false accusations. All that remained from our past was the simple truth. Jenny once slipped up, I nearly walked away, but we found the courage to rebuild. And now that the main source of anonymous harassment had disappeared, we could truly breathe freely again. During those weeks, I kept thinking about proposing to Jenny. I was held back by a lingering worry that too many painful memories might overshadow the romance of it. But I realized that if we had overcome so much, surely we had earned some peace. And what could matter more in marriage than the ability to get through storms together? I just had to be sure I was ready to leave my anger behind. Time passed quietly. No more suspicious emails. Gradually, I found myself healing. Jenny, noticing the change in me, relaxed as well. When I finally told Josh I was thinking of proposing, he teased me. "Man, that's quite the final twist to this soap opera. Guess it's time for a happy ending." I smiled, feeling he was right in his own playful way. All that remained was to pick the perfect moment, buy a ring, and plan the proposal. I'd never considered myself much of a romantic, but our story deserved a beautiful gesture. The beginning had been so hard. We could at least script ourselves a fitting end. I just prayed life wasn't hiding more nasty surprises down the road. Still, I was willing to risk it, because as I'd learned, a love that survives betrayal and trials can become even stronger if both partners fight for it. I couldn't believe how normal life had become now, like a weight had finally lifted. Our nightmares were behind us, and we often joked that we had been tempered by fire. Yet in my mind, I kept rehearsing how to propose so Jenny would remember that moment forever. I didn't want a public spectacle, thinking that the decision to marry was something deeply personal. One evening we went to a restaurant to celebrate the anniversary of our new beginning. I had the ring in my jacket pocket, and I was unbelievably anxious. Jenny had no clue, believing we were just commemorating the day we decided to give our relationship another try after her affair. We took our seats, and she took my hand in hers. She whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me or turning away when I felt broken. You've shown me that people can truly change, and love is worth the fight." My throat tightened because those words confirmed everything I had hoped was true. I took the ring box from my pocket and opened it in front of her. Her eyes went wide, and she gasped. "Jenny," I said, "we've faced it all. Your mistake, my terror, someone else's lies, and the fear of losing each other. But we're still here, together. I want you to be my wife, so we can stand against all these ghosts of the past and shape our future the way we want. Will you marry me?" Tears glistened in her eyes, and she simply nodded, unable to speak. I slipped the ring onto her finger, and at that moment, I felt like we had finally won our personal war for happiness. It was as if the rest of the restaurant vanished. Some patrons might have noticed us and smiled, but I didn't care about an audience. This was our private triumph. We embraced, and for the first time, I sensed that final piece of the puzzle click perfectly into place. After everything we had endured, we deserved this boundless joy. From then on, my doubts receded, replaced by plans for the future with my fiancée. Of course, any relationship has its little quarrels, but we learned to talk them out immediately, rather than letting resentment fester. I'll never forget the turmoil and heartbreak I felt when I first discovered her affair, or those days of following her around and letting my suspicions consume me. But that is part of our history now, a story that ultimately made us stronger. Sometimes friends joke, you two should write a book on how to survive an affair and anonymous harassment. We laugh, realizing that not everyone can find a way out, but we managed to. Maybe it's because, deep down, we loved each other enough to grant a second chance. Or because both of us took responsibility for our faults. I can't say for certain, but I'm grateful we pulled it off. A few months after our engagement, we had a small, quiet wedding. My father actually teared up, seeing how genuinely happy we were to finally become husband and wife. Josh served as best man, and Jenny asked Cindy to stand with her. My mother hugged us and repeated, just keep talking to each other and never bottle up misunderstandings, which we both agreed with wholeheartedly because hidden resentments once nearly destroyed us. Mark had long since faded from our lives. I only glimpsed on social media that he'd been surfing somewhere with a new girlfriend. I felt no hatred, just indifference. Rebecca left our city after confessing her role. According to my sister, she apologized again for the trouble and thanked us for not pressing charges. I didn't need her thanks. I only wanted her away from our life. One day, Jenny asked me, "Will you ever truly forgive me?" I answered, "I think I already have. There's a scar, but it doesn't hurt anymore. That's the difference." She nodded, smiling sadly. Yes, scars remain, but they don't stop us from being happy. We value each other more. We spend time together eagerly, we each pursue our careers, and we might someday have children. I've learned not to believe in a fairy tale love that magically defends against all problems, but rather in a real, grown-up kind of love that demands two people work at it every day, communicate honestly, and forgive each other. If anyone asked whether it was worth going back to Jenny after her affair and everything that happened, I'd say yes. Because now I know how deeply we appreciate each other when we walk side by side through life's storms, be they people like Rebecca, our own weaknesses, or random incidents we once mistook for fate. I'm thankful I didn't break down at the moment it felt like all was lost. In the end, where there was once a gaping hole, we built a bond that's stronger than ever. And where there was distrust, we learned to cherish honesty above all else. Perhaps some might think this story sounds naive or overly dramatic, but I lived through every bit of it in my own skin. It became my personal odyssey. If not for the betrayal and all its aftermath, we might never have realized how much we could love each other. I don't wish such trials on anyone, but if you ever find yourself facing betrayal or manipulative attacks from an unseen source, remember there can be a way out. And sometimes, against all odds, what waits at the end isn't just separation, but a genuine rebirth, albeit with scars on your heart that make your love all the more meaningful and real.